Hello, I am Colin Gibson. I am the boys' director of coaching for the North.
Hello, my name's Darren Warham. I'm the boys' ECNL National Director.
Hello, I'm Cullen. I'm the girls' ECNL Academy Director.
Bilyk, Academy Director on the boys' side.
Thomas Finlay, Chief Executive Officer.
My name is Kalla I'm the girls' director in the South.
Hey, I'm Neil Roberts. I'm the director of soccer at the club.
Alright, so we're here to talk about the Independence Way. It's a collective document on paper, but we want to start expressing it to our members, and so you've all been kind of picked and chosen to kind of lead that way. And let me start it off. I think that the first thing that kind of introduces the Independence Way is our values. And full transparency, we got this from a gentleman called Darren. Remember that? And Darren, in a meeting with me a long time ago, said, "What's the club's values?" And it was at a time when we were trying to decide, do we merge, do we do this, do we do that, and how do we approach the industry? And it was kind of like, okay, and they used a famous quote from Walt Disney, decisions are easy when you know what your values are. And so what we did is we went about a process of developing what our values were, and we kind of narrowed it down over time to what we call the 5 C's. And really to get it going, I'll chat about a couple of them, but the most important one, and we start with, is character. It's a true North compass, right? And then character is about resilience, it's about honesty, it's about integrity. And when we look at that, it's not just the players, it's the coaches. What type of character is the coach have? What's the personality? What do they bring to the table? And also as a player, what's their character, what's their attitude, or they competitive and things like that. Also, you can take it a step further and talk about our teams, what sort of characteristics the teams have. Character is the first one. Then we talk about commitment, right? What sort of commitment do we have as coaches towards the game? Do we educate ourselves? Do we go and get certified? Do we get licensing? Are we committed to showing up to work with a positive attitude every day? And it's the same with the players, and also the families. The other C's, as we keep going into it, community is very important. Community reflects basically it's a team, it's a collective mentality, it's a we mentality. Now a community is obviously not a community of coaches, but it's a community of players, parents, team, also even the municipalities we work with, and we can extend that conversation throughout the whole club. Communication, I know everybody here has watched the video Neil did. We won't talk too much because that's on the YouTube channel for everybody to watch as well, but communication is key. It is important how we talk to people, how we motivate people, and how we communicate on the field, and how we communicate with families and members, and this is a good example of that. And last but not least, I know it's been a lot of conversations recently about its competition, right? When we want to compete, at the end of the day, in the competitive side of our organisation, there's 2 goals, 2 teams and a ball, and how do you compete? And I think that's what extends into how we talk about life lessons. In this environment, we want children and youth to compete at a high level, and that's what life's about as well. You got to put yourself out there and challenge on a daily basis. So that's kind of the values. And the fact that everybody's just sitting here nodding their head, it's not really turned into a conversation.
Thomas, I think it's a really good point that you start with setting these 5 C's are like our guideposts, right? So when we talk all the time, I get phone calls from these guys, they get phone calls from their coaching staff when they have, whether it be on the field problems or administrative problems or just problem solving that they have to come up with, right? And it's really easy just to kind of turn to our jersey, see the 5 C's, to look on the wall around all our offices and refer to them, right? And that's your guide, right? Use those principles to make your decisions based on how you manage your players, how you manage your families, and then educate the families too, so that they can actually use 5 C's and be aware of them.
I think those values are not only important when it comes to the decision making. Also, for me as a coach, when I'm dealing with the children, I can talk to them about values, right? At the end of the day, it's not only about creating wonderful soccer players, but it's also about educating and then molding young adults. So when I talk to the kids and say, you know what, one of our C's stands for character, I can give them examples. I say, you know what, we had a new kid coming out. You guys high-fived the new kid, said thank you for coming out. And those are things that are very easy for me as a coach to reiterate. So I'm very grateful having these guidelines.
Kalla's sitting here with his accent. I've got an accent. Everybody's got an accent. And the independence way is really the guardrails of the club. And then you're allowed to bring your own identity and things like that within those guardrails. So, Kalla, what is it? When we say what's our identity as a club, what is that? Or Neil, what is our identity of the club?
Yeah, I mean, I think our identity, when we think about our identity, we think about it in a bunch of different ways. With the identity of our players, for me, the identity, as you said, is a lot around our 5 C's. But when we start talking about the players and the development of our players, I think it's really important that we emphasize creativity on the field and decision-making on their own part. That our coaches are putting the players in a position to where they can think creatively with options. Like our identity, from when I see players and I watch our teams play, it's a very creative, forward-thinking, and hard-working and intense environment. That's what we want in training and in our matches.
On that as well, I think when you talk about your identity, I think the word community is massive for me. It was one of the reasons I wanted to join the club. It encompasses all levels, all age groups, boys and girls, recreational, all the way up to pro teams. So we're a community club. We work with schools, we work with Parks and Rec, we work with academies, and we provide an environment for all levels to play. Co-ed all the way up to the senior boys and girls teams and into the professional ranks. So community is a big part of our 5 C's, and that was one of the reasons I personally wanted to work at the club here. Is just it reaches far beyond just the competitive age groups.
And it's been ingrained in our club since the legacy clubs, right? And since we got started. Someone like Colin's been around for a long time, and you've seen that grow, right?
Yeah, I remember being coached by some people in the room. It was the same thing. It was, we had to be hardworking. We had to work harder than everyone else. We were expected to carry ourselves and be respectful and hold ourselves accountable to the standard that we set for each other. So no matter what happened, win or lose, we were expected to compete and be the hardest working player on the field if you could be.
And that's expected, the attitude, the mentality of working hard. And without that, you really can't develop, so to speak, in our method, right? But what is development? What does that mean? If we are talking about development with players, what is development?
I think Yori brought it up, talking about having so many coaches with accents, with different backgrounds, right? So everybody comes from a whole different past. Fact is, there is no blueprint for development. If you talk to someone from England, he might do things completely different than someone from Germany, from Brazil, from the US. If it was that easy, everybody would look at Ronaldo, would look at Messi, would say, hey, whatever they did, let's copy it, let's do exactly the same thing. But it's just not that easy because everybody needs a bit of a different approach there. Neil brought up the wonderful word of environment. To me, it's all about creating an environment where the players can be creative, where they can be self-confident. They don't have to be scared to make mistakes. And I love that we, as a big club with people from so many different backgrounds, came up with the independence way where everybody had a bit of a say, where we created a document that we all can identify with.
I think in addition to that, with development, it's a balance between self-motivation of the player and the resources and the environment that we provide. So as a staff, we provide the structure, we provide the guardrails, we provide the training environment to coach players in the flow of the moment, in individual moments. But also I think you look at players and you think they've got to take ownership too, and how they can improve their own game away from the training environment. Can they put time into their game with striking the ball, receiving the ball, dribbling, passing? All those are elements of the game. So for me, when you talk about development, it's important to have a community club. It's important to have a setup that is inviting and enticing for players, but it's also the balance of a player being highly self-motivated to go away and work at the game too.
You said a word a couple of times there, training. And as a club for us that has a recreation program, better program, adult league, even the professional relationships there. We use the word practice when we reference the recreation program, but we use the word training. You know, and you train, get better with the competitive players. What is a training philosophy that we have in the club that falls under the independence way?
For me, and obviously I've been at the club for 14 years, I think somewhere along that line, maybe not quite as long. But I think if you're talking about all of our programming, from recreation all the way to the top academy to the professional environment, I think enjoyment and having fun is a key component of all of our training philosophy. If you're not having fun, you're not going to want to develop, you're not going to want to get better. So I think that's an important piece of that, is making sure that players want to come to training, number one, and want to be in an environment where they can enjoy the game and get better every single day. I think that's pretty important.
Absolutely.
I think we're also going to challenge them. I think one of our 5 C's is important from a competitive standpoint, so we're going to make it competitive. And we're going to teach them the game in all facets, technical, physical, and the tactical components of the game.
Yeah.
That's important.
Especially when it comes to fun, to me, that is the key overall, right? Especially when we talk to kids that are in the youth academy. I think it was Anthony Dorrance who once said, champions are not made in those 2-3 practices where everybody's looking at you, where everybody's watching you. Champions are made in a time when you're not on the field. What are you doing then? Are you still playing soccer? Are you still eating, sleeping, breathing soccer, or just sitting on the couch eating potato chips?
You know,
So,
I was going to say, in follow-up to that, I think one of the things that you want to provide in training is trying to produce confident players and confident teams. And to do that, I think you can't be afraid to use the word repetition. You've got to go out there and repeat some of the things that you do, and you don't just go and touch on defending set pieces once and never go back to it again. So a training environment, and what we're trying to produce is repetition of the skill set, understanding of the game. The players know what to do in and out of possession. So, you know, there's always so many fancy drills out there, but ultimately what you're trying to do is get very good at the basics, get very good at being hard to beat, and be good at creating goal scoring opportunities. So that's the value of training every day: repeat and go again, and give the players the confidence and the knowledge to improve on the field.
And I think that's it. Coming to Saturday and Sunday, right?
Yeah.
What do you take from what you did during the week into Saturday and Sunday? Do you understand, and does it become easier Saturday and Sunday because of how your training philosophy as an individual, as a team, as a group works through the week, right? So we touched on it, the commitment of, are you willing to commit every time you step onto the field, right? One of the 5 C's in there. Are you showing up to every training session wanting to get better? Are you just showing up because sometimes it feels like a chore, right? So we want every player to get better, but every player has a different level of commitment and what they're wanting to put into it. So I think Saturday and Sunday is the prize at the end of the week. So what are you doing leading up to Saturday and Sunday to give you that opportunity to be the best player you can be?
Well, I'm preparing for that test on the weekend.
Yeah.
During the week.
So it's fair enough to say we have a game plan, right? We train kids a certain way, we have a certain mindset about that. But also the games on the weekend is almost a test. So how do we take what we've done with training? How do we evaluate? How do we analyze the games? And then how do we take that and get the players some feedback and interact with them and communicate with them? What's that path look like?
Yeah, so player feedback is incredibly important from the staff standpoint. You know, we try our best to make sure we give feedback in training, games, evaluations, whether it's a meeting with the players. I think we give players as much feedback as they're willing to hear, right? So we give it to them in training, in a group setting, individually, before or after. Maybe during a water break, we bring a player aside to tell them things they can work on. We talk to players during or after games, halftime, pre-game, post-game talks, where we're giving them feedback on what we're looking for. How are we going to be competitive in this environment today? What can we do to be successful? And then we go a step further. We ask them questions. Hey, think about this. Watch film if they have access to it. Did they think they did well? How can they continue to go? And then asking them guiding questions, having them figure out the answer, not just saying, hey, this is what you have to do to succeed. Sometimes different players have to do different things to find success on the field, and that depends on every player and each environment. So it can be tricky. Biggest thing for us is we have to be patient with players and understand that the light bulb clicks at different times, and being patient and understanding that players will continue to develop and grow, not always at the same rate that we may want, but we have to be patient and understand that players will get there. Players will continue to train, continue to get better, and get to where they want to be.
And it's not just the player. Obviously, knowing that the professional level players like agents, managers, and all that full-time professional coaches interact with and deal with. At our level on the youth side, obviously our main interaction is with the player, but we have to incorporate them in that communication, and even education and the transparency in what we're doing, and hopefully something like this helps that. But what ways do we do for player education and development of the player and the parent as well as involved in that process?
For me, there's parent meetings where we tell them, hey, there are things that this is what we're working on, these are our goals. We do want the player to be involved in every conversation if it's about their development. We think that's important for the player to hear that. We understand not all conversations around development are as easy, right? There's going to be difficult, honest conversations that have to be had, that the player and the parent need to be present, because the player needs support from not just the coaching staff, but also at home. Their parents are a big piece of their life and they need their support during those difficult times. But when both parents and coaches are on the same page, it does help the player accelerate their growth and development, because they're hearing the message not just from one person, they're hearing it from both people around their entire environment.
And I think that what we've done a really good job of, and we continue to do a good job at this club, is understanding that the parents and players are stakeholders at our club, and that they really need to be brought into the equation at the right moments and the right times. They also need to be kept at the right distance at the right moments and the right times. And the more we educate them and the more we get our families kind of all in, the better development goes for the player, family, and the ultimate experience. The club is that much stronger.
To follow on that point, one of the things that I've tried to do as a coach is when I meet with parents and players, is I usually like to give it about 8 games into a season, to not get caught in their labeling the player a starter, a non-starter, a midfielder, or a forward, but giving them enough time so that we can make good, honest assessments of where the player is. That's crucial. The one thing you look for as a coach and players is consistency. So you need a little bit a longer body of work to identify a player's strengths and areas of the game where they need to improve the most. So, when we do those parent education meetings, whether it's in person or newsletters or those IDP meetings, it's important for parents to recognize, give the coach, give the player time to form those relationships, understand his or her role on the team. It can change from month to month. And, once you see the confidence in a child grow, it's such a rewarding thing. But, I think for parent education, trust the process. It's not necessarily where you start. It's a long journey, and enjoy the journey, and some setbacks and adversity are a great challenge and character molding for the individual. So
I love hearing about how everybody knows education, development, players training, getting better. As a young player, you're juggling right growing up, but wherever you're from, your background, you always want to get better the next time you try. And it's part of our values, your character, your growth mindset. One of the things we haven't talked about though is the coaching education. How do our coaches get better? How do we challenge them in our organisation to have that mindset to get better? Because the coach isn't getting better and evolving and developing, that doesn't get passed down to the players and the parents and things like that.
Yeah, coaching education is crucial. It's critical that we identify and recruit and bring in coaches that do have the growth mindset, right? As you said before, if you're not growing, you're dying.
Yeah.
Right. And so we really look for that when we hire staff. We want people that don't see themselves at the end of their career, but they see themselves in this power that can continue to grow and develop themselves. We do everything we can at the club. We do a lot at the club, actually. Colin's sitting here. We helped Colin get his A license, right, Colin?
B license.
B license, yeah. So A's on the way. And we have a wealth of experience at the table. And that's the other thing for me, what I really like about our coaching education is that our directors, some of the guys here today, as well as our current coaches, they're all in to help each other. We recently had our coaching education session this last fall, and Jeff and John conducted sessions in front of the staff and did a super job. So it's great to see, our young staff seeing our experienced staff conduct sessions, learn from them, grow from them. But externally, Thomas, we are affiliated with Philly Sports Plus and their education program. So we have access to all 4 of their coaching education sessions throughout the year.
USL as well.
The USL provides coaching education.
Coach's voice, yeah.
Yes.
And then,
ECNL.
that's a great, I don't even think we've touched on kind of how valuable that new coaches voice program is provided through the ECNL.
That's the beauty of it, right? It's impacting and influencing other people, it's helping people develop, whether it's players or coaches, even parents and referees and administrators within our club. But no, all this has to lead somewhere, and I think one of the beautiful things about our organisation is we have opportunities for players and coaches, staff development plans, we have player development, right? And we call it the pathway. Let's talk about the pathway. What is the player pathway at the club? What does that mean? Does that mean that every single year a player is expected to move up a team and then within 3 years they'll be at the professional level? Let's clear that up a little bit with the pathway. What is a pathway for players and what does it present itself at the club?
I think, when we look at a pathway, you look at, if you come out to Richard Barry on a Thursday night, you've got rec kids, you've got competitive players, you've got youth academy, you've got ECNL, you've got pre-ECNL, you've got a multitude of different levels within the club, and how do individual players work their way up from one thing to the next. And we've touched on it already in regards to player development and players developing at different speeds, right? So we look at it from the aspect of, has this player earned an opportunity to be looked at in a different environment? Is that player ready from a commitment level? The amount of communication, I think, that people don't understand of how much we as directors actually talk to each other about players. I'll use myself as an example. I'm driving home from Wilmington. I talk to Jeff, I talk to Colin, and we talk about how the games went. We talk about who's doing well. Is there an opportunity for a player to come into training the following week because we're looking for a particular position to be filled? Are we struggling in a certain area? What does the next team down have in their group that a player needs that opportunity, right? So is that player ready for that kind of commitment? Are they happy being in an environment that's local? Or do they want a little bit something more, right? So I think from the player pathway, one of the best examples that I've seen in the few years that I've been at the club, myself and Jeff talked about it last year, was on his U19 team last year. I think there was 3 players remaining from U13. Originally U13 and gone through 6 years of development, right? Out of 23, 24 players. So when we talk about pathways, where did all those players come from? Did they go from rec to youth academy to competitive, from a blue team to the regional league to the ECNL national, to now they're in the academy and they're playing in the USL academy, which is the highest level that we have in the youth? How many players are coming from Jeff's program going into the pro environment and training with the pro team? But there isn't one simple black and white answer as to what that pathway is. Every player is different. Their development is different. Players don't necessarily go up the ladder. Sometimes the best environment for a player is to go down the spot. Jeff touched on it. Is it enjoyable? Well, some environments aren't enjoyable for players. So that pathway of dropping down a level sometimes is the best option for that player who's 14, 15 years old. But it doesn't mean that they're not going to go back up the ladder to become an academy player. So I think that's something that we constantly talk about as a group.
All the time.
We want to make sure every player is playing in the environment that's appropriate for them at that current time.
I think it's critical that you said at that moment in time or that period of time, right? Because the developmental curve based on age is so, it can be steep and it can get flat, right? And it changes. We joke around a lot. Colin said about a year ago, he referred to the player pathway more like the game of chutes and ladders. You know, where you're walking along and every once in a while, you have a steep curve, and then you go a little further and there's a little setback. That's way more realistic, really, isn't it? As far as player pathway, as far as we definitely don't want to advertise, or we don't advertise that the player pathway is a moving sidewalk that you just hop on, and just because you stay on it, you get someplace, right? It's a lot of hard work, there's setbacks, there's adversity, and not all players end up in the same place, right? So that's something that's really important to understand, and it kind of comes full circle, doesn't it? Like, they can't understand that, players can't understand it, families can't understand it without us talking to them and communicating. The whole piece of the puzzle.
It's so tough. It's not hard when you have to recommend that this is better for your development if you're in this environment for 6 months or a year. It happened personally to me when I was 15, and knowing actually probably changed my life because I got a little bit of an attitude and resilience of it, and following me, I made a national team. Right? And so it's up to people and how they respond to these things. So I'm sitting here listening to all this, and it gives me a great amount of pride and joy to be part of this team, this club. So if you don't mind, tell me something that you're proud of it. What is it you're proud of it in this club? What is it you're saying, you know what, that's part of our culture, and I'm proud to be part of that culture. Just go around and tell everybody that. And I know that's not a question, it's written down. I'm throwing this at you, but just don't mind sharing what you're proud of.
I like the fact that we're not afraid to use the word competition in our 5 Cs. I think all 5 Cs are very, very important in their own individual entity, but I like the fact that competition is out there for us, that we want to be the best that we can be at every age group. We want to be the best in the training environments, the players that we produce to go to college, that they're ready and they're equipped, they're confident young players, that we can send players that can go pro. We can win national titles, we can compete for state titles. So the competition element is something that I take a lot of pride in, the fact that yes, it is about commitment and enjoying the soccer and trying to improve as a player, but we're not afraid to try and go and win things. We're not afraid to put ourselves out there against the best in the country. And that's something that I'm excited to be associated with.
I've been around the club for a long time, and one of the things I'm really proud of is that we're a very confident club in our approach. I think when we get everybody together, we're a band of brothers, and I like that about us. I think we're confident, but I also like that we're not complacent either. I think we're always looking for ways to try to get better, try to push the envelope a little bit, and increase the experience of our members and the players. So for a guy that's been around a long time and had his kids play at the club and things like that, it's really rewarding to see the club continue to kind of push the envelope.
For me, it's clearly the people, honestly. I go to work, I love the people I work with. They're good coaches, but what is even more important to me is that they're good people, right? I would not mind going out, have a cup of tea with them, something else. And that's, to me, that's so important, because that will pay out in the end. It will come back to us. We are raising children here at the end of the day, and you don't need someone who stands on the sideline and berates the kids and yells and screams, profanities, stuff like that. I want to work with good people, because that makes me enjoy my job as well, and that's something I'm proud of.
That's what I was going to say. Again,
Yeah, sure.
close to it, I was going to say, look, proud of the values. It is a family, which is why I think all of us have chosen to work here, and why I've worked here for so long, because it fits that family value. And last thing I was going to say, I'm proud of our accomplishments and what we've been able to accomplish as long as I've been here at the club, both individually and as teams and as employees, and overall as a club. It's been pretty special.
I think for me, the commitment that the staff and the players show, whether it's win, lose or draw on a Saturday and Sunday, to show up on Monday thinking that happened, how do we get better to go through the week, right? And whether it's the staff coming together and having these conversations, whether it's the kids showing up with a smile on their face again in that first training session, that to me is a positive as we move forward. So it's a lot of pressure on players and coaches after a weekend to come back into that first session, but to see them wanting to get better makes a massive difference in the direction you want to go in.
Yeah, I think for me, it's a little bit of everything. For me, it's really proud of the opportunities the club has grown and developed into and has provided the community as well, right? So I started at the club, it was really small, one location. I say really small, there were still probably like 40, 50 teams at the time. But where it's grown to, we now have all these locations, and when you drive around, you get to see and it's back there. You're like, wow, okay, look at people we're impacting, and like we're in Shelby, we're in Forestville, we're in Charlotte. You get to see a badge around in cars, and it's exciting the opportunities we're able to bring to the community and how we've grown, just like the player pathway, we've grown as a club. It's exciting. Exciting to be part of.
I'm ready to go to walk.
Hey, thanks for joining us. Hopefully, this provides a little transparency from our club to you and what the Independence Way is. Like anything else, if you've got any questions, ask. Thanks.